water. All right, this is Soul Speaks 5D episode number 70. Episode number 70 with Dr. Joe, also known as Dr. Lightheart. Number 70 episode. All right. Episode. Here we go. Yeah, I do need some training. Let me just check this real quick and make sure that we're good.
I could check it on my.
Oh, here we are. Okay, I see Susan's here. Hi, Susan. And it looks like Judy Dyer's in the house. All right, Judy. We have to get Judy back in here. Susan Fitz is in the house. Oh, there's quite a few people here. For some reason, it just wasn't showing up. It's probably because I have too much running on here. All right, Anna Toothman's here. Yeah, good to see everybody. So we got Dr. Joe in the house. We don't know what the hell's going on. We never do, but we're going to try to figure it out. I'm just going to let you jump on this one. Get us started. What are we going to talk about today?
Let's talk about quantum consciousness. What it means.
Quantum consciousness.
Consciousness, yeah. What it means.
Quantum consciousness.
What I mean, everybody goes on about it because it's quantum. And in truth, I've got no idea what that means, really, because it's quantum, to me, it means aspects, multi-dimensional aspects of the human and the ability to tap into different attributes or different skills or abilities at will. But unfortunately, I think as this quantum consciousness opens up, everything floods in all at the same time from many, many different directions. And it can tend to be a bit overpowering for one. What do you think, Todd?
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know. I mean, yeah, we've had some really good conversations on this show since we made the jump. And we're just starting to get back to our normal pace, about 12 a week. But what I've noticed is it's kind of followed what our journey's been, because this started for us, March 1st was when it came in. March 10th is when we made the announcement. And March 24th, which was roughly 94 days ago, was the day that we no longer put full-length productions onto the old platforms, with a couple of exceptions here and there due to certain circumstances. But there was no, like, you would think you start a new enterprise, and again, I'm speaking to your question, or to what you put in on the table. You think, oh well, we got to get to work, man. We got to get everyone and and only very little was allowed to attach and to congeal. And so that I saw again as kind of a mirror of what's happening, with me, with Soulgy, with people that I'm interacting with, and then with the collective. And so it was like it was all these things that had been the norm no longer work. Like having 7-8 weeks of two shows a day scheduled. I'm telling you, we're doing 12 to 15 a week as of really, you could say as of this week or the first, and there's only 8 on the calendar, right? So there's something happening there about how things happen now, and even the way that the organizational part's coming through. It's, I put an email out the other day, you were on it, and I said, okay, this is where we're headed. But then with all the feedback I got, then I realized, oh, this is a different animal. We're going to have to set something up that's not traditional. So we're going to have to kind of meet the energies of collaborators, halfway, you could say. So anyway, long story short, then through all of this, functioning moment by moment, day by day, this multidimensionality is becoming, something that you can't deny, you can't argue. It's affecting everything. We could talk about changes in the spine. We could talk about other things like in my body and other people's bodies that are happening, all kinds of stuff. And then you wake up and you start the next day, and it's like, not from before. We used to say on the show, you and I, you wake up the next day, there's a higher truth. So some things don't apply, but it's not like that for me. It's like I wake up and everything that was, let's just say a principal component, let's say an infrastructure or an operating system, it's not even there. There's like a new software, or there's a new something, or there's a new set of things that have been unleashed. And if you look at the proliferation or the release and therefore proliferation of AI, that has absolutely kind of taken over these last 2 or 3 months. Not taken over, but I mean, it's being widely used. Okay. I think energetically that says a lot. Like, that says a lot to me, like the energy of it, not in a bad way, but like all this other stuff is changing. Like, for instance, my friend Nicole McAdoo out of Australia, she wrote another book, and she was on about a month ago. And she says to me, man, I published my book like overnight. I just got this idea. Let me get an AI app, and I'll just put it into the AI app, and boom, there it is, including the book cover and including the. And then I had already been picking up, and I thought, oh, because I'd been thinking about it. I thought, well, maybe we could streamline some of this and look into that. And then our IT partners, we met right after that, and they're like, hey, by the way, we're working with AI. And we're going to be able to do this possibly in a few weeks, or do that possibly in a few weeks. So the fact that if you look at it, energetically, that, and say the world is a person, and the person that is the world operates like we do, uses computer, uses a phone, uses, let's just say modern technology. So number one, we'll just stay with AI. As a technology, as a hidden technology. If they're releasing it now, they've had it for 30, 40 years, right? And of course, the acceleration of what can be constructed and conceived and constructed and developed because of that totally accelerates whatever technology they have that we might see in, based on the history in 20 or 30 years or whatever. But my point is, there are all these new possibilities in the field, and really it's a reflection of us. Our technology is being turned on. So the multidimensionality, the quantum, whatever you called it, what did you call it? Quantum consciousness.
Quantum consciousness, yeah.
Yeah, I've not heard anyone say that. Quantum consciousness. Now I've said quantum thought creators, a quantum reality, quantum field, but quantum consciousness, I like that, because that to me describes where we're going to try to dig today, which is, I have all this new software. Not only do I have all this new software, okay, but there's software that I had that's no longer, it's become obsolete. Yeah. It won't function in this field. And I will just leave it at this. Franco always referred to the ego as a software program. Now, remember, he was one of, I'm sure many that were part of the architectural team that built this. The lady that was on yesterday has memory of that. So he would always speak in tech type of terms, strictly from a metaphoric standpoint, not saying that's literally how it works, but it's very close. So I think where I would like to explore, because I don't have the answer, Joe, this is what we do, right? Yep. There's been a lot of talk about the ego over the years. First the ego was bad, and then it was, oh, the ego's part of us, and we got to love everything. Yes, I get that. But I believe that the ego is a program, and that it's not being propelled by the moon anymore, or by the inverted matrix projector through whatever science and with a planetary, whatever that, however that is set up. I, as he said, the day will come, and I actually saw this yesterday. I happened to be looking for people and stuff, and I came across one of his advancing consciousness things. I think I was taking a walk. I thought, oh, I'll just listen to this. I skipped to the middle. What's he talking about? He says the ego is a program, is a software program. This was 2021, early part of the year, and he said then, which all this he had said is, you know, he would come out on the show. He said a year to a year and a half ago, the moon got turned off as projecting the inverted matrix. That's all gone. So essentially, the only way the ego program will continue to run is through us. And even then, it will fade over time because it's not supported by, say, a collective force or anything that's feeding it. So the last thing I'm saying is that I believe, and I could be wrong, I believe that it is the ego patterns. I'm not saying it's going to be gone. I'm just saying it's, and I'm not saying like what we'd say, oh, well, it's going to be in its proper place now. It's on the back seat and it's not driving the car. No, I think it's actually the conscious point that we regulate ourselves. So if something starts to happen and we start to go into our old pattern, we can catch it. And that's the point, that we catch it. And it's simply the truth. We are not our fucking egos, because our egos are every identity that we have, and everything is there. So what does that mean? For me, for the first time, I can go, wait a minute, that I don't have to go there. I really don't have to go there. And I just make that choice. And I know that doesn't sound like fucking, you know, chariots coming out of the sky and lightning bolts and, you know, dragons and all that stuff. It's a very human, from a multidimensional standpoint, a very mundane thing when you compare the human, at least from our perspective, to all the glitter and the gold of all of our aspects. So I feel like it's come down to that. And a couple of the people that I've talked to in the last week that were new, that were very lit, that if anyone watched the shows, kind of spoke to that. They spoke to, it's come down to being the human being, but being the human being in its multidimensionality, tucked into this space, and ultimately that this body is the soul. You know, so I don't know. I just feel like maybe we need to examine the ego if we're going to talk about quantum consciousness. Does it contain the ego?
Well, one thing I'd like to say, you say things have changed. One thing hasn't changed. You don't half go on. Have we got any time left?
We got plenty of time. We don't have another show today.
No, I'm only joking, mate.
I know you are.
So yeah, the ego, I think the normal, healthy, functioning ego is essential to a human being. I think that the problem is ego attachment to things. Okay, I think egomania is the problem, not the ego itself. So I think it can only be attached to things, right, through two aspects, really. One's fear and one's pride. You know,
fear and pride.
Fear and pride, they're the only two aspects, really, that generate the fear or the fight or flight response, which causes, and this is a term that's coming to the fore more often now, it causes something called an amygdala hijack. And when your amygdala hijacks your system, it's because at some level you've perceived the threat, or the ego has perceived the threat to itself, and it goes on the defensive. When the ego's on the defensive, it can't think creatively. It can only match and react to old patterns. So that's when it recognizes or recognizes, right, old patterns from the past. So we can't move forward then into any creativity because we're still locked into old belief systems, old programs, old conditionings and stuff like that. So I agree entirely with what you said, that we can't dissolve the ego because in essence, the ego is the human being. It's the mind and body of the human being, which is in fact just the vehicle through which the soul evolves. But the soul needs the human being because that's how it feeds back information back further from the soul. So that, you know, the human being is the skin suit, if you like, is It's the vehicle through which information is both received and
Right.
transmitted. Does that make some sort of
Oh,
sense? So this
oh
is
no,
how I see it.
I totally get that. I totally believe that. Yeah, this is absolutely, we're information gatherers.
Yeah.
And receivers. But if I look at the whole ego, and again, I'm really not looking at this like I did align with that, what you said prior. I don't really do so now. Not that I know what I'm aligning with, but with the way I look at it is like this. And I don't know about you, but I know over the last few weeks, there's been a shitload of galactic information coming in, a lot of revisitation to past lives, to the historical, the sequential evolution and story, from galactic wars to here, and how everything's still here. Like, in other words, we're just having different versions of it, right? And so the thing is, if I look at, like, for instance, if you look at I don't know if it's the Nag Hammadi or the Dead Sea Scrolls, where they talk about the archons in explicit detail. Now, this has been talked about, in other places, but this is a biblical text by the Essenes, by the Gnostics, and so they talk about the archonic influence, which the characteristics of it, and it's exactly what you just said about the ego. It's in that state of the ego that you're talking about, because they cannot create things. They can only present things. So if you look at the behavior, let's just say, of the ego, because that's what it is. Now, is my ego me? This is why we're swimming in these waters. But the ego has to tell a story, has to think a certain something. It can't, you know what I mean? Like what you're talking about. And to me, that's the same type of dynamics if you look at the collective and the archon or higher dimensional beings that are siphoning our energy because we have unbridled madness and anger and, and so on. We know the story. So I don't know. I mean, to me, I still say, I'm not saying that the ego doesn't go away, but I'm not saying that it doesn't, because I've had too many experiences in dimension, and anyone that's had experiences with past lives, including galactic, knows there's plenty of fucking ego in all those stories. So I don't know. Does it serve? I don't know. Do we take it with us? Is there an ego in the 5D?
Well, apparently, I mean, if we talk about dimensions and stuff, see, to me, at one level, none of this really matters, really. It's interesting. But I live my life, as you know now, by how I feel, not necessarily about what I think, And if I get into over-analysis of things, really, right, I can let it all go and think, oh, how am I feeling now? And I'll just go back to feeling. Now, you mentioned something. I can feel now, if you like, when certain things are coming in, right, of an ego construct type thing, either fearfully or arrogantly. Fear and pride, they're the two things that to me close the ego down, or it becomes attached then to old patterns. Now I see that attached to the first three chakras, or the first three dimensions, if you like, of the human being. So there's the 3D reality, when that's really all about safety, security, belonging, and all those things. And I think that they're part of what's called the lower heart vibration. But I think there comes a point, and I think humanity is generally at this point now, where at 3.49, we all reach a crucifixion point. We all reach a rock bottom where we have to surrender our 3D thinking, right? And we have to surrender to ascend. I'll use the word ascend, but I don't actually believe in ascension as such anymore, right? To actually go into the next dimension, which is the beginning of the higher heart vibration. And I think what that is it represents a spiritual awakening to higher thought. Now, the ego's still there, but it's operating now at a different frequency. And I think it does dissolve, or the attachments dissolve. But as the spiritual awakening happens, there's still loads and loads of attachments that we need to learn from. There's a personal consciousness and unconsciousness. And as we go further or deeper into it, we have to almost trace back our ancestral conditionings. And this is where DNA comes into it. It's fascinating, this, Todd, you know, because this is where the junk DNA, which isn't junk, now starts to align with the Akashic records, which aren't personal now. They become collective, you know. So that's the way I see it. Now, one thing I've learned recently, well, not recently, quite a while now, is I got told quite clearly that, Joe, you need to disentangle these ego defensive constructs in the sequence that they were laid down. Now, this is really important, this, Todd, because you have to feel your way through that and ask your intuition to guide you. Because if you rely on any external sources, they can actually send you on the wrong path then. So let's say, for example, you can be trying to disentangle something that you really want to work on, but actually it's actually obstructing something that you really need to be working on in order to free things much more readily. So, I mean, these are all called flashline sequences and stuff, you know, because they're laid down in the script of our DNA. Whether DNA is 2-strand or 12-strand, it doesn't matter at the moment. But I think, you know, I mean, Morgan talks about this a lot, these morphic resonances and morphogenetic fields. I can see clearly now that as we sink deeper, our consciousness expands. So it seems like we're going higher, but in actual fact, we're just expanding in consciousness and seeing more. Because I think that everything's already been done. It's already happened. It's already in place. I just think that our mind expands, our smaller mind expands to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And in the end, complete cosmic consciousness is when we completely dissolve again into this oceanic consciousness. And that's what true enlightenment is, when there's no more attachments. And I think that's the point at which the ego dissolves completely and is no longer necessary anymore. I don't know whether that's made any sort of sense.
No, that makes sense to me.
It's a feeling, you know.
No, that makes sense to me. And yeah, it would make sense to me because and I don't know if the word is ego. That's the word we use. Yeah. And obviously, obviously everything got distorted dramatically down here. So, but I could see where if you have the original soul, I always say it's the mother, you know, and then she splits. Well, right there, the minute you split, there is a differentiation, or there is a perceived differentiation because now there's two, right? So now maybe one's masculine, maybe one's feminine, you know what I mean? So I can see that to me would be a polarity. And I would say yes to everything that you're saying, to include polarity. Polarity would become one, you know, as we, and so then it goes back to, for me, like, this is happening anyway. Like, it's just my own thing, right? I see everything that the stars, how they're connected to the earth. This is all a great geometry, a great mathematic creation, but everything here is not only providing the schematic and the structure of the game, but it's all, every point of it also is a point of separation or a point of disempowerment. I'm really moving towards, and this is just me personally, I'm not there yet, but I'm moving towards, to hell with the astrology, to hell with it all, every bit of it. You know, a couple of interesting conversations that happened earlier in the month. One was with Sandra Walter. I had asked her specifically about a piece she had written a couple of days earlier. And in her own language, I hope I can get it right, she was talking about things that we've talked about before. She was talking about how, you know, obviously traumas from the past, we learn to disengage and to not identify with that. That's not us. Then we woke up, in our wake up, we start to have channelings and transmissions and all those things that we can do, right? All the memories. And that's been important as we have come into a greater awareness of what we're not and head down the road of what we are. One of the things she said, though, was along those lines, and that all of it's going away. In other words, all of them have to be, or all of them, it's inevitable to even like the monad. And that's what caught me. She goes, even in the monadic realms. I'm like, so you mean like even all the way up through the construct, everything that you can attach to goes away? Yes. And then somebody else came on a couple of days later and was kind of talking the same thing. And then the last point of reflection I have would be when Darius, I can't remember his last name, came on, Lisa Harrison's partner came on, and he talked about, I guess you could say there's more than one universe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And some people like myself have experienced evidence of that. And that basically stepping out, and I kind of pose this to Sandra, like it's almost like we have to step out of the construct itself into that space that you could say, like from a vantage point where you can see the different universes, that space. I've visited since there many times, to really get the right perspective, that everything in that construct is part of that construct and it all has value. But ultimately, I guess where this all ends up, and it's not, again, not rocket science, but what people have been saying lately, like the last couple ladies that were on, which is this year has been all about the human being and the body, and that all of that stuff is going away. Our visitations, our interactions are all happening inside of us. And this is going to be happening more and more. And so we're not going to get away from being human, right? And then to kick that off, these March, April, May, June have just been like the same pattern, the same cycle of cleansing, of purging, of, et cetera, with the power of the 369, very, very obvious for people that follow it. But we're coming up on a 777 gateway, which happens to be the same day I went on the streets 12 years to the day. I didn't know that. 777 is like a 369 on steroids, because it's a 21, it's a, et cetera, et cetera. So there's something really big. And the reason I'm concluding with that is because whatever's happening, I feels like, to me, that's going to be a huge propelling force of activation that brings in a lot of our memories, particularly prior to this life. That's going to start to help us make some sense of this and to realize to a greater degree who we are, and again, this is not answering any questions, but I'm just kind of throwing that back to you. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
Yeah. And like I've said to you before, people say to me, have you got any feelings what's coming up? And I don't operate like that anymore. You know that I operate one day at a time by the way that I feel, and I think it's easily now, they call it the secret of attraction. I think what's going on is it's the secret of distraction, that people are being attracted to distraction, and it's taking them away from their body and their body sensations and their self-awareness of their feelings and emotional states, and it's whipping them straight up into their head. And that's where the game is lost then, really. The head can tell you that you've cracked it, but really I know now that that's where the egomania is, really. That's where the imbalance comes. And how do I know when I'm in egomania? Because I feel it, Todd. I have a simple thing that, how do I know whether I'm on the right path, right? Is my heart's open and flowing, so I just keep going. End of story. It's nothing more than that, but how do I know when I'm being diverted, distracted, or anything else? Because I feel a close down. And what I do then is, rather than react, I take a breath, breathe away the hook, if you like, or I've taken the bait, breathe the hook away, take a step back, and then become objective about my own subjectivity. So there's almost like a higher self, Joe, that's the witness. And then there's, let's see what Joe's doing, right? And it's almost like there's a stage in front of me, and I can see the actions that he's thinking of taking, right? And it's almost like there's a collaboration between me higher self and my ego self, for want of a better expression. And then we come to some sort of balance point or 0 point where we can see, and I don't use good and bad anymore. I use taking the healthy option or the harmful option. That they're the only two options I've got now, healthy and harmful. And when I breathe this away, because that my whole PhD was really about the intricate nature of how breathing impacts upon the way the heart works. And the way the heart works, how that sends signals then back to the head. So my thing is about hacking physiology to change psychology. So it's almost like dispensing with psychology. Not that psychology is not important, but it's going into spirituality first. And the positive spirituality then can actually impact upon the psychology, which can cause us to choose more healthy options, which can improve the quality of our life. So how do you know you're out of balance? By the way that you feel. But Todd, when people feel disturbed, they go in all sorts of different ways. Either they do what I did, they'll go on the piss for years and try and anesthetize the feelings rather than understanding them, or they'll take drugs, or they'll eat loads of food because that temporarily quells the disturbance, or they'll go to the doctors and get tablets to anesthetize them. But in the end, the emotional state, it's an indication that there's some sort of thing that needs to be learned in order for progress to be made, not only by the ego itself, but also by the soul, you know. So that's where I'm up to. And the other thing is, Todd, is if things aren't enjoyable, it feels like something's not working properly then. If you don't have this deep indwelling feeling of lightheartedness, I'm not saying that things aren't difficult, but if your heart's not open and flowing and allowing the spirit to flow through it, which gives a feeling of lightheartedness, I think that probably something's not right there and needs adjusting. What have you got to say about that then, Todd?
Well, I like the way you explain it, because, and again, I do think a lot of this stuff is happening naturally. It is our identities that are fighting it, and what is the part of us that wants to understand? You know, I mean, I don't know, is that ego or is that something else? You know, I don't know, but all of, having said all of that, the heart is really like, and I think people are really picking this up, like the heart is the driver. The feeling is the driver. And to tap into that, you can't serve two masters, right? You can't be, you know, even, the ego can't be driving if the heart's driving, you know what I mean? So this is where we're making this conscious choice. Maybe that's what I was reaching for earlier, because it does make sense. Because I've been playing a lot with a couple of things. One thing that you just said too, but one has been, which hasn't really been hard for me, because I feel like it's been something that I've pretty much always operated with the majority of the time, is from the heart. And I think many of us can relate to this, because we were overgivers, right? We were also doormats. But when I sit in my heart, and it's confusing, because I have like a couple of issues on my plate right now, and I go to my heart, and I don't take any actions. That I figured out. I just sit there with it. I sit there with the love. I sit there with, the knowing, and then something comes.
Yeah.
And it comes from the mind, not the ego, the mind. And so that seems to be working well, even though it's uncomfortable and frustrating at times. But again, what part of me is that? That is my ego, right? Like, I need to know now. I want this. I want, so that's being quelled. Now, the other thing that you mentioned that I've been doing in my walks is, I saw this near-death video, and the guy said, he got thrown out of his body, and he said the first thing that came to his mind was, holy shit, I thought that was me. That was the first thing that came to his mind. And so it sent some kind of code to me. I thought, well, wait a minute. I've been having this whole thing about my soul, like literally lands in my body. Hey, I'm here. I'm here for this moment. We're going to go for a walk and get a feel for this. It's happened many, many times. But then after I saw that, I thought, okay, because I had a couple of experiences where I was both over the years. And so I thought, I'm going to try this. So I start walking, and obviously I'm Todd, in as holy and whole as he can be in his multidimensionality. And then I pop out. I split. Now I'm Big Todd, and I'm watching Todd. And then this whole exchange of information has, now I've probably done this 5 times, but this whole line of information gets exchanged, and it's very, very multifaceted. But it's given me the proper perception or the perspective. It's altering my perspective in my functions as a human being, even in this crazy transitionary time that we're going through, because it is.
Yeah.
This is. I mean, we could wake up tomorrow, and it could be anything, right? Anything could happen, which is kind of what I'm feeling. I'm feeling like this, and I'm not going off. Well, I mentioned the 777 gateway. Okay. I know Julie brought up a great point about the Gregorian calendar. I actually believe that the year starts on March the 1st. And if you look at the prefixes of the most of the months, they align with what I'm saying. But I feel like that it's, I used the word pop a couple of months ago. This is a whole different pop. This is something I feel like it's going to show itself. Like I believe we're going to see something or things that are felt one way or the other worldwide, and people like us, groups like us, communities like us, will be just as challenged as everyone else, with one difference. We have, whether we know it or not, we have a collective solidarity from our hearts and our intentions. Okay. And we have, let's just say, a bigger tool chest to deal with these things. And this would also point to what a lot of people, I think you included, have talked about for years, which is there is a time when we will be put to work. And it really feels like, man, we can't run this thing much further. What I mean by that is there's so much distortion and it's just not going to work, right? It's not going to work. It's like the false flag frequencies are just dying. When you have just, you can pick many examples: Biden, Trump, the legal stuff going on, the North thing blowing up, Ukraine. I mean, it's all just a bunch of fucking bullshit. But right behind it, there are some puppet masters pulling strings. I believe this is part of what's coming out. And if you look at if you look at the disclosure, conspiracy, truther platforms, and you look at even reels, okay, there's a lot of talk about Anunnaki. There's a lot of talk about stuff that's been denied for years and years. Who do you think controls all that? They control YouTube. They control Facebook rules. You're right. So there's a reason for that. There's a whole bunch of information that's about to be dropped. And I believe that's why they're getting so cocky. But what do? We're going to do something that I guess you could say Jesus did, Buddha did, and many other enlightened beings that we don't even know about because they've been kept from us. I mean, that's what I see. I don't see us going out there doing schools and building and cleaning up the earth. I don't see it that way. Not that wouldn't be a repercussion of it. I see it as actually being continuing to expand our being and our awareness and our quantum consciousness.
I think along with quantum consciousness comes quantum conscientiousness. And you raised some interesting points. That I think that the heart is the driver, but I don't think it's the heart, actually. I think it's the soul that's the driver.
Yeah. Really, yeah.
And I know it's difficult using words, but what I'm saying is there's two aspects, as far as I can see, to the heart. There's the lower heart, which is attached to sentimentality, and there's the higher heart, which is detached with love, and it's complete detached with love, with love. And what the lower heart does is sentimentality closes the heart down. It causes an ego contraction, right? Because it's defensive. But when you get into higher heart, you realize you can feel the heart closing down because it's latched onto old patterns of the past. And we can keep the heart, like you said, You can almost sense whether the heart's closing. And in that moment, you have a conscious choice now, whether to go forward and overcome fear. So we begin to outgrow fear by taking steps forward now against the patterns that we've automatically responded to or reacted to in the past. So every time we take an action that's against, it neutralizes it. It creates more space, more higher power flow comes in. We start to get more courageous, and it almost like helps us. And people say is we need to raise the vibration. I don't agree with that, Todd. It's just words. But the way I see it is we need to get out of the way so that the vibration raises us, you know, because it's all there. It's like an atomic reactor that we've compressed because of our close down and because of fear. And every time we open up or expand a bit more, new power flows in. We become less powerless and more powerful. And when I say powerful, you know, it's used in the right sense, because when it's actually moderated and sort of regulated through an open and flowing heart, it comes out. It's just unconditional love flowing, and it almost like inspires. And people say to me, when you say you don't fight with anything, no, I don't fight. I'm not in fight or flight. But it doesn't mean to say that I don't take inspired action, but it's just not reaction anymore. Todd, I've never been busier in my fucking life, mate, to be honest with you. I'm absolutely and utterly overloaded with stuff to do. And as one of my friends, Lisa Marie, says, you know, if you want something done, give it to a busy person, you know, and that's what seems to be happening. But the human in me, the Joe, the ego, the Joseph Peter Aloysius part is saying to the higher power part, you'll have to back off here because I'm absolutely fucking exhausted with this, you know. And so sometimes when people get in touch with me and I don't answer them back, it's not because, and people who know me will know this anyway, it's not because I'm being rude. It's because I'm overloaded and I'm either forgotten. Because I mean, I'd like to answer everybody back, but in reality, I can't, you know, because sometimes little Joe, right? So we've got little mind and big mind. Little Joe is afraid to open the emails and open Messenger and open Facebook because there's loads and loads of stuff. And I just can't possibly answer everybody else back. And I'm not trying to put myself onto some pedestal as like some guru, because most of the time I've got no idea what's going on, Todd. You know, I can see that my job is to share my experience, my strength, and my hope with others, and point them back to the source of their information that's specific and individual to them. What is that then? It's their own soul. So I say, hang on a second, take your head off, turn it the other way around. Stop expecting, which means to look out for answers, and start inspecting, because what you're looking for is in there and it's not out there. And that's when we have a spiritual awakening and a psychic transformation. And you know, it's almost like saying, you know, oh, I never saw that before. You know, it's that simple. It's like, oh, right. You know, and when people say, it's funny you should say that, I think, oh, the door's opening, you know. And then the thing is, Todd, there are principles to live by. They're not rules, they're principles, really. And what's the main principle is focus on feelings first. And I think that the world in its current situation, the world is perfectly set up for each individual to work towards self-mastery. And self-mastery means free will choice. It means unimpeded, you know, not attached in any way, shape, or form, and the freedom to do with what you really feel. And people can't get their heads around it. The next bit that I'm going to say is, when I wake up in the morning, I tap on my heart, I open my heart up, and I say, what have we got on the cards today? Because I've got a collaboration going with my soul. And again, if you want me to do anything, just give me some clear messages. And then, Todd, what I do then is I do what I feel then, not what I think. I do what I feel. And people say to me, why have you done that? I said, because I felt like it. You know, and
because I felt like it.
Yeah, because why did you
no,
do
it's
it?
true. It's true, though. You're
because
right.
I feel like it. Because, Todd, I'm not doing it, generally speaking, unless I'm duping myself. And I've said this to many people is, I don't want to be deluded anymore, because I was like you. I was a gross people pleaser. I was taken into situations where I thought I knew what I was doing, to find out that I was being deluded, duped, cajoled, and you know, basically led down the garden path on many occasions, because I was not only sort of open and sensitive, but I was naive and rather unintelligent, to be honest, you know. And this was from the ego that thought it knew what it was talking about. And Todd, I'm probably like that now. And there's loads and loads and loads of things to learn. And that's part of the excitement, is that when I wake up tomorrow, I wonder what I'm going to find out today, you know. So to me, freedom is the greatest feeling in the world, where there's no obstruction to unconditional love flowing through you. And the unconditional love is not coming from me. And there's another thing I have is, you know, when people say, send me love, I don't feel that that's a correct thing anymore. I think get out of the way, maybe say a prayer or something. But I think to actually send love in a way, it's sort of, it doesn't sit right with me anymore, to be honest with you, Todd. Because sometimes if you send love to somebody and it did have some effect, how do we know that we're not interfering with their actually chosen path when they actually need to grow through that, you know? So there's all these things come into my mind. And then I say to me, just let me just do this bit. Left and right hemispheres, right? Occidental, Oriental, East is East and West is West. And maybe it's time that they both meet, but they can't meet from within that duality or that polarity. We have to come, like you said before, you have to come out of it. And I think that that's what we do. The triangulation point is when the heart opens and you sort of, everything gets merged then in the cauldron of the soul. And then the correct answer then comes out from that sort of more stable point. I've got no idea what I've just said there, mate. I'll have to play this back.
Good stuff. Good stuff. Well, yeah, I mean, it really is. I mean, I experienced it through the shows, and of course with, you know, with taking, let's say the second step after the you know, indoctrination period whirlwind of the last 90 days. So I got the you know, the next step of Soulspeaks network, which I am seeing very clearly. And again, I'm saying this as an example of what any of us are going through. I'm not saying it's the exact same thing, but energetically, just stay with me. So one thing I'm noticing is, first of all, I know, regardless of my past history, I can't do this by myself. There's no fucking way. Can it be done? Absolutely. Can it be done and built from the ground up by the individual? You know what I mean? Because that's really what it is, and that's what we're doing as souls, right? I mean, that's really what we're doing, because we've hit this new level of conscientiousness, quantum consciousness, that has opened up something that we didn't have before, which is to actually create in non-dualistic creations. So this is pretty cool. But I also realize, you know, hey, there's a whole bunch of stuff that has to be done, or does it? Wait a minute. I'm just giving an example. Let's pull back the social community a little bit. Let's make this a long-term, you know, trajectory to a perfect, you know, unfoldment, you know, a few months down. Let's focus on the strength of Soulspeaks, which is content. But instead of doing it in the old way, now we have this new platform, let's come up with something new. So now that's kind of what we're working on. But so my point there is, there's something that's come into me that was egoic, that I had to do everything. No, you know, it's not even healthy. So there's all these factors working against me when I start to go into that mode, which I've surrendered. I'm done. Yeah. I've got it. We're going to pull this together. We're going to do it. The second thing I noticed, because we also have the Soulspeaks Fest, which I hope you can come to. I want to talk to you about it. The Soulspeaks Fest, you know, I knew that was on the board. I could feel it. I knew this year was going to be the same rhythms as last year, but everything's changing. There's more balance, even though there's a lot of weirdness. And so the way it was presented to me moved it 3 months to December. And I'm like, that didn't feel right to the human, but it felt right to the heart. It made total sense, even though it looks, you know, it wasn't what I expected. So there's this kind of like, not a tug of war, but like a push and a pull. And it's like, in the area of what we're talking about, it involves the ego, certainly involves the heart. It involves the ego and it involves the mind. Okay. And it's like trying to formulate and create with this thing still working itself out somehow. But the last thing I would say is when I do get up and this is most days, I'm up and I get up earlier and earlier and earlier. And I've been trying to like build some type of some type of schedule or process or routine. And what I notice is that the first hour to 2 hours, there's no music, there's no functioning, there's nothing but literally sitting around in solitude and no very messages, minimal, nothing. No on the phone, just sitting by myself, taking everything in at a conscious level. And then when I come out of it, I'm like, what the fuck do I do now? And it's like, just pick up one thing and do one thing, right? And then when you're done with that, pick up another thing and do another thing. And I feel like like it's not even me. Like you know what I mean? A lot of people are going to relate to this, the multitasking, like boom, 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 boom. I have 15 balls in the air. Boom, man, and maybe it'll come back. I don't know. But for right now, no, I keep feeling, which is I love that. Not thinking and not, what I keep feeling. And this is both internal and external is slow down. There's no rush. There's no time. Everything that you've got a beat on is in the process, and have faith, and my human is still going, man, throughout the day, not hung up on it, but it's like, okay, what about that? Oh, I gotta let that go. Oh, what about this? Oh, I gotta let that go. Oh, what about that? Oh, I gotta let that go. What about that? Oh, it's gonna be all right. So there's all this I don't know what you call it, it's like, you're going down the road and you kind of get off the path and it's just like pick you up, put you back, pick you up, put you back. There's a lot of that happening and a lot of solitude.
I agree. I understood exactly what you said there. When I wake up in the morning, it's like being empty-headed,
Mhm.
but not in a sort of it's hard to explain really. It's just a peace of mind, really, a peace of mind. It's almost like a nurturing thing. But when you say about the time thing and you mentioned the process, I don't think it's trust the process, but trust the processing, really. Because
Mm.
I think what's actually happened is, and this is what I've learned, is that what the heart gives out sends back to the brain, right? And if you breathe in a certain frequency, 6 breaths per minute or thereabouts, what it does is it actually changes your brain waves to something called an alpha theta state. And that to me is that level playing field. That's the equilibrium point, the neutral point, the 0 point. It's like it's a 0 point where everything's contained in it, really. And I think that what actually happens then is there's a sort of expansion then, right? And a load of different options come up. I'm just wondering what that was. There's all sorts of funny things going on behind me.
There you go.
So what I'm saying is, in order to change our minds, we need to change our hearts first. And the way we change our hearts first is through being aware of our breathing. And it's not for us to do the breathing. It's almost like the automatic responses that we've generated over life. We have to let go of that and allow the breath to come by itself. And I think that's what really the true soul resonance is. It's when you get out of the way of the automatic breathing that's programmed and being fear conditioned, because breathing patterns are fear conditioned as well. Once we let go of the fear, we take a bigger breath. We feel as though we're more expanded. And then the soul then sends signals back to the brain, which then hits a specific frequency that's associated with a particular task. And then that's when we act upon that task then. And it's like a carousel. I mean, I've always sort of spoken to you about how I feel this is that the heart is connected to the 12 cranial nerves.
Mm-hmm.
The 12 cranial nerves represent, in a sort of mystical, symbolic way, the 12 disciples or disciplines or intelligences that are available now to all human beings, you know. And we could get into the eons of metatronic reversal, you know, and the 10 sphere tree of life, where we've been revolving for millions and millions. You can get into all that, but that's all dissolved now, as far as I understand. And the 2 spheres that were obstructed, right, are now back online. So we've got this perfect connection back to the original template, which has got 12 portals to different streams of consciousness. And within those 12 portals, there's different harmonics. So there's 12 harmonics there, 12 different frequencies, 12 different notes. Within those are multiple subharmonics, which represent different ways of thinking and different experiences as well. Todd, I see this, you know, the moment of conception. Not, this is where astrology comes to me. It clearly showed me, or whatever this thing that shows me stuff, it showed me that at the point of conception, the way the stars were aligned then, it was like a snapshot of the universe. That was your journey in this particular lifetime. And it sort of folded in on itself, right? And it almost represented how your body would be formed. So your body really is a sort of as within, so without, and so on and so forth. If you focus on your body, you can almost get a sense of the part of your body that you need to work on, because that represents the next steps in your evolutionary journey, you know. And I get all this, you know, before breakfast, and I think that's very interesting. Thanks very much, you know. Shall I have a cup of tea or shall I have a cup of coffee, you know? And then we're back to reality then. But all that's all very, very interesting. But how is it going to practically help me?
Yeah.
You know, and that's what I want to know is, because I you know, I went through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and that sort of helped me to clear up things as well. And one of the things is we are here to play the role that we are assigned. And I got told quite clearly as Joe, you'll get a different assignment every single day, and it mightn't even be associated at all with what you did yesterday. So forget yesterday, just work with what emerges right in front of you now, and just trust the process and the processing of it. And I say, well, how will I know? By the way that you feel.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, there's a lot to what you just said. I mean, but yeah, what does it all mean? I don't know what we've gotten into here, but whatever it is absolutely beyond profound. I mean, like we were on something major, like new scriptures, new good book, the codes for the next whatever. I don't know, something huge though. This is huge, but at the same time, there's almost like a simulation within the simulation in this particular realm. Okay, where there's been a narrative that involves a lot of fuckery, that a lot of that stuff is coming out now, not to just be confined to the world. I mean, you got all kinds of stuff that the lid cannot be kept on any longer. I think that's why those powerless powers that be are so blatant. Like, how the fuck do you get a WhatsApp text verifying the president of the United States criminality and checks proof? I mean, and they're just going, hey, there's nothing going on here. And you can go right down the list and look at it, not just the stuff that they've been throwing out there. So all behind these, I mean, the energy behind it being, hey, it's kind of like you're stupid, and we're your monarchies, or whatever the hell you want to call it, and always have been, and so we're gonna pop this thing, and you're just shit out of luck. It's kind of like if you look at Ukraine. I'm not being political. I'm talking energy here. I'm talking like, look at this as if they were people in your circles treating you this way. So you have Ukraine, And again, no politics. I think it's the stupidest fucking thing in the world anyway, people killing each other. It doesn't matter who started what. There you go, right? So you got a president, they're about to have elections, but instead they're going to call martial law and cancel elections. So yet you're a democracy. So all of these hypocritical, cognitive dissonance types of things, to me, they're telling me, hey, something really big is going to change. And the other reason I really feel that is because, and I know we've said this, but I feel it in my bones. I feel it in my soul. I feel it in my heart. It's a bit wild and strange. It's a bit frightening. It's also exciting. But I went out there on the 7th of July in 2011, I'm sorry, 12 years ago, in a different earth.
Yeah.
Because this is a different earth this year. This is not just about one man. This is about the whole world. There's a reason that I spent 6 weeks preparing. I mean, I sat there, knew what I was going to do, right? Like, so this is kind of where I see us, except for now it's 12 years later and we're in a different world. And now our experience, and with more memory coming in and things that come with it, is going to be put to work. And I'll just say this: we had Judith Kuzel was on earlier in the month, and when we started the show, she was in the dark, and they're having electric rationing, right?
Yeah.
In South Africa, which is not a third world country. We're talking about a very rich country. So she starts telling us about it. And I said, well, let's just talk about it. I didn't know about this stuff. So it was really interesting. But one of the things that she said was that it had been going on a long time. And you could have 4, 6, 8 hours, no light, just out of nowhere. That everyone at the boots on the ground level, and by the way, all of the parliament and other dignitaries, their lights stay on 24 hours a day. Yeah. Because she has a cousin that's married to a senator or something. But she said all the people, regardless of color, are helping each other. Now, if you look at the floods in Australia a couple of years ago, if you look at other things that have occurred, there is a lot to be said for that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that part of what I believe, if we are truly going to max out our potential, it's going to be based on how much we own it, how much we believe it, how much fear we remove, etc. But if we are truly that conscientious quantum consciousness creator, we don't have to go through the shit. Now, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it'll go just like it did at Atlantis and just like it did before and all the other times. But I don't feel that's what I feel like we have a chance to create create whatever outcome we want in the physicality. And again, I could be, smoking something, that's got me off my rocker, but there has been that consistency throughout the Earth story. There has been catastrophic things that happen. We don't even know the vast majority of it, at least the 99% on. But we do know about Atlantis, and we do know enough about Lemuria. We do know they were there, and how could they just sink and this and that? So does it have to be earthquakes? Does it have to be all that stuff? Or are those elements that were inserted into the narrative so that we would hold them in our heads as belief systems? That's why I said even the stars, even the calendar, everything except for one thing, that feeling that you're talking about. That's it. There's nothing else. There's nothing else. When I was on the streets, I remember that was it. That was my go-to. I called it the mother because that's where I felt. That's how I felt. But whatever it is, that's all you have, man. That's it. That's all you have. That's it. In the moment, that's all you have is your heart. So, I look at it this way, and I run myself through all these different exercises. What happens if some stormtroopers barge in and, ultimately they tell me you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that, we're going to kill you. Kill me.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at. I'm like, I'm not going to compromise what you described, you know, I'm not going to compromise my heart, which is really an extension of my soul. It's my soul physicalized, right?
Yep.
And I'm not compromising that, which also means that I will, and I'm glad you brought this up because I didn't understand it at first. Fear and pride. Okay. Egoic based fear and pride. I know that I have been prideful in my life. And I know that it's kept me from doing, it's closed doors, right?
Yeah.
I'm at a point now where, especially this year, you know, I mean, I'm so affected every time I get on and do a show, every time I get on and do music, I feel like I go to a different place. It's strange. But I've kind of made up my mind where it's like, okay, I am not going to let pride get in my way, because when I let pride get in my way and I examine it, I don't do this or I do that out of pride, but it's really what I don't do because I'm in fear that it won't be reciprocated.
Yep. Yep.
I mean, to be brave enough to say, I'm going to lay it out there, and I can live with that. I can live with saying, here you go. This is where I'm at. This is who I am. This is what I desire. This is what I want. This is what I'd like to achieve, or whatever the case is, without any fear, you know, that I would be embarrassed by somebody's non-response or something not working out, or whatever the case is.
See, there's a lovely phrase that comes to mind, and it's what I used to do for a long time, is preaching caution, but practicing evasion. So it's a very sneaky thing that we can say, no, we need to just
preaching
hang on.
caution,
Preaching caution, but practicing evasion. So we're still sneakily trying to get away with stuff because fear was still driving the process. So it's when you say, oh no, let's just hang on a little bit longer and see what happens. But that small part of it at the back's thinking, oh God, I hope it goes away, you know. So the idea now is, right, to sort of realize, obviously we need to be cautious, but is it really cautiousness that's talking, or is it fear under the surface that's actually stopping you from going forward? And these are the subtle dimensions. You know, I was trained in sort of different levels of subtleties, and we start off gross. That's the physical body and the big emotions like anger, and then we move as we sort of evolve. We go gross, subtle, causal, and then non-dual, and that's really the soul's progress of the sort of embodiment process, and then the radiation. Because I think what's actually happening is, as the soul's coming in, any pain we feel just represents an obstruction that we need to let go of, because it's either fear or pride obstruction. So that's how we learn it. So then when we take the action, whether it's to overcome fear or to come back and say, look, I've made the twat of myself here, I realize I was being prideful, then that gate then opens. The soul then is able to infiltrate our physical body more. And eventually, every single pore, every single atom of our physical body then radiates this information. And I think that that's what's happening. It shows like this, where people are radiating more and more. And that's what's actually attracting people of the same vibration or wavelength. I mean, in a month's time, actually, just over a month's time, we're working together now. And this is the power of Soulology, basically. So Kate Lumley, myself, Paul Luftenegger, Lisa Marie, Mika Pathway Louise, and somebody called Jimmy Bongo as well. We're all getting together, right? We're trying to formulate a place in the UK, because Paul and Kate are coming over to the UK. So we're all going to meet up, right? And we're almost basically just going to sort of open up to say how we're expressing things, you know. And as you know, I have an approach called the I Am approach to health and well-being. Kate's got her utopic vision and utopia. Paul's got his songs and stuff like that, all harp-based. Lisa Marie's all talking really about helping allowing a child-centered approach to the new humanity. And I really, really resonate with that, really, where the new children will come in to guide the adults to a new way of life, you know. So it's new schools opening up across the country and across the world, all with the same underlying principle where we watch the child and all we do is feed and water it and allow it to grow itself in its own strengths. And Todd, I feel so powerful about that. You know that phrase, our children are not our children. They
Right.
come through us, not from us. That's
Right.
so big with me. But what I've had since I went to Glastonbury a week ago today, you know, to do some grid work on the tour and stuff like that, you know, and I met up with another friend, Amanda Lawrence, and we all did our bit, you know, and, you know, I go along, put my hands up in the air, do a bit of a shimmy, and then I get like, okay, you've done your job, you can go back home now. But I try and make it fun as well, because I went down on my motorbike, right, and I promised myself a big long tour on my motorbike, you know. So I did a 500-mile trip on my motorbike.
500 miles?
Yeah, yeah,
Holy
250
shit.
there and back, yeah.
That's like what, 4 hours each way?
Well, it was actually nearly 6 hours each way because I had to go. I had to come off the motorway or the freeway, as you call them. It was just too sort of arse tweaking for me, really. So I went down the sort of, you know, because honest to Christ, Todd, I mean, I stay in the slow lane, and when I come out, I'll overtake it about 70, 75 miles an hour and then get back into the lane. But honest to Christ, the speed that some of that traffic's going now, I couldn't handle it, mate, to be quite honest. So I thought, sod this for a lark, you know. So I, rather than grit my teeth and being like an egomaniac, I thought I'm going to come off and go down the A roads. And I ended up going down the borderlands of Wales. So North Wales, Mid Wales, South Wales. And I went to Glastonbury that way. It was beautiful, Todd. It was a great journey. Anyway, to cut a long story short, I think that people are collaborating now from Solar G and from different groups, you know, and we're all getting together to start to take action on stuff rather than just theorizing now, you know, because I think more than anything else, I'm getting a real big push is, okay, you know, it doesn't really matter how it's working, how you're feeling and what you feel that you have to take action on then, because that's what's going to materialize it. And I'm almost like becoming less involved in people's stories and more involved is, okay, that's your story. What's the solution? And what do we do next? So I've become very, very cut through recently, you know. And Todd, I've had in the last week since coming back from there, I've had so many massive influxes of information. I've been taken right back again to the Magdalene energy, the Rose line, the ancient Egyptians, the Dogon tribe. All this stuff has come back. This used to happen to me as a child, right? And it used to freak me out. I've had red dragons visiting me now. Welsh dragons, the Celtic connection, fucking loads, mate, honestly. And my head's been absolutely twatted with it. And because I have to go, slow down. I can't handle it anymore. What are you trying to show me? And this is what I got clear as anything, that you're being influenced by the Lyran connection and the lions, but also Sekhmet was in there as well. And I'm like, fucking hell, I think I'm going to go back to the psychiatric department, you know, but that's in 1 week. So many things have happened just to sort of show me we are with you. You've got nothing to worry about. Just keep going forward. And don't worry if anybody thinks you're as mad as a hatter. Just go forward now. You're on the right line. You're on the right path. Just keep going. And Todd, that's all I do now, because I couldn't, more or less, I couldn't give two shits what anybody thinks about me anymore. And that's been one of the most freeing gifts. I care more about what I think about me rather than what I think other people think about me, you know. And I can look back to my sort of progress to see where I've come from. And you know what, mate? I'm not doing too badly. Not doing too badly.
No, hell no, you're not. And you bring up a really good point, because aside from everything we discussed, because again, you know, like you said, like, what does that mean? What does that mean? One thing is very clear to me. Even though the way things get built and organize themselves and so on is changing, or it's returning back to a natural organic flow, right?
Yeah.
One thing is absolutely certain with me, and that is that creativity, you're going to do nothing but help yourself and the world by you know, going into a creative process. You can do it anytime, you can do it under any conditions. And you know, we think of creativity more likely when it comes to, you know, like producing a poem or a song or a movie or whatever, you know, website, whatever. But it's actually available for everything. Like you said, here's the story. What's the solution? Well, that takes that used to be, what does society say? What's the conventional wisdom? What does the government say? Put on a mask, take a shot, you know, whatever. But it's the same creativity, the same sacred sexual power, life force power, whatever you want to call it, that you use for those types of things as you would for anything. And I've always kind of had a beat on that. I haven't always practiced it, but I can see where it's starting to really materialize. And I think that I really, and the second part of that is coming together in collaboration. Okay. Now, again, it's changed. We had a lot of programs. There were a lot of different agendas. There was a lot of different schools of thought. There was a lot of different motivations, inspirations, you know, goals, and all of our ancestral lineage tied to us all. You know, coming together now is a totally different thing, because, you know, it's kind of like this. In the old world, you have to set up a vetting system. Oh, here's how you enter this space of this purportedly all-inclusive group, okay?
Yeah.
That wants to align with universal energies, so therefore to try to emulate all the qualities it has. But here's the line, because we have boundaries, which are what? They're fucking walls. That's what they are. Now, I'm not saying they all got to fall tomorrow, but you know what? We are conscientious quantum consciousness in the flesh. All right. So who's to say what the sky, you know, what the limit is? But my point is we would have this wall up here and say, well, you can't enter this space unless you abide by this, this, and that. I could talk about some people out there. I don't need to. Okay. I don't have anything against them, but don't tell me I can't smoke a fucking cigarette or not come into your circle, or don't tell me that I can't eat meat and not come into your circle. Now, I'm not throwing shade on these people, because it works the other way too.
Yep.
But what I am saying is, and I've said this for years, and people don't always agree with me, but love is trust and love is truth. You cannot have unconditional love without having unconditional trust. And I'm not speaking from the human level. Oh, well, I can't trust so-and-so. We all have that. But what I'm talking about is new creations where you don't bring in that duality into the space. You don't bring it in with you. That should be the only question, if there's a question asked. Do you have any components of duality that you're bringing into our circle? Well, how the fuck would I know?
Yeah.
You know, this is how we find out things. But the thing is, what you're describing with Paul and Kate et al., everybody that I'd love to be that part of that group. It's a fascinating group. The great thing about this is it's not about, sure, you have a beat on what this might be, but it's the intention, just like at the tour. It was the intention of the people that's it. That's 99% of it right there. It's the intention, because that intention, because there's two or more, it ignites that third energy, and that's where the coincidences start happening, and that's where, you know what I mean. But it's you know, a space where nothing is left unsaid. Okay, this is the kind of space that we have where nothing. That's why even like in the formation of Soulology, like to me, it's like I get it now after 90 days. Okay, it's just one step at a time. One step at a time. You take a step, see who's with you. And maybe there's 5-6 people, and you take another step, and now there's 22 people, and 3 of those people dropped out. But then the next step, they came back. So it's like this organic kind of thing. And but it's important that nothing be left unsaid. And what I mean by that is, if you have something in your heart, if you have something that you want to put on the table, we have to be in an environment where everyone can have that support and confidence that they can do it. Kind of like the Soulology platform, right? because we have to trust. How can we ever function in a higher state beyond 3D if we don't trust? It's not going to happen. So how do we get there? You know, to me, it's kind of like, you know, baseball. When you have a tie, the tie goes to the runner, right? If I'm going to sit down and break bread with you, you should be able to say everything that you want to say. I should be able to say everything I want to say, because in this environment of pure intentions, we don't have axes to grind. We have universes to create. And by the way, I just want to tell you, I should probably connect you with, because I mean, who knows? I mean, these things pop in your head. But Kimberly Ross, you know, Franco's partner. Well, I speak to her, you know, I try to speak to her like weekly. She's got some things, like a lot of people do, some ideas of what she'd like to do. But one of the things she's doing right now is Franco's daughter, Melinda, has started a school, has started an alternative-esque type of school. And, you know, I talked to Kimberly a couple of weeks ago. She was telling me how, you know, I think they came to her, or I can't remember how it worked, but basically introducing into that type of thing that you're constructing, that they're doing. Melinda started about a year ago, where they're teaching meditation, and they're teaching some of the elements that are still fresh on the kid's mind, because they're not that far from having been delivered, you know, like what a game changer. And and think about this. You guys are kind of on the same trajectory. She's doing it. I know 2 or 3 other people that have started something like this. And so maybe this is that grassroots, boots on the ground, you know, guerrilla warfare kind of thing that, you know, comes out of all the major structures crumbling. I don't know.
Well, I see it, Todd. I think that everything's disintegrating for a purpose. Okay, it's going back to basics. I think that the infrastructure will remain in place to be infused with a new energy, a positive energy. So it's not like we're having going back completely to scratch, because, for example, the whole internet system, the World Wide Web, could be used for positive purposes. So that's already in place. It's not like a war where everything was physically destroyed. I think that the whole infrastructure is still there in a matrix, if you like, to be used with a different creative energy. There's no point, as you know, in fighting against what's already occurred, because that's like shadow boxing. It's already materialized. What we need to do is, like Buckminster Fuller says, is don't fight, don't waste any energy fighting with the past. Get behind it and create something positive to kick it out, and don't give it any energy, because that's how it survives, you know. And I think what's actually happening is the old system is so desperate now to cling on to what's gone before that it will try every trick in the book. I think in order for it to die away more quickly is basically to take no notice of it. It's to take no notice and don't waste your energy on fighting it. It's just use this new creative flowing energy to create something beautiful, you know. And, you know, I agree, Todd, we don't know. And I think in groups, I try and help groups. I've sort of run groups for a long, long time. I just say, look, if there's anything playing on your mind, here's the opportunity to get it off your chest now. So just say, if you see any problems, say what the problems that you see are, but then offer the solution that you can see. So basically it's saying to people is, how do you see this? So you give people the opportunity to not only speak their minds, but also to offer inspirational, creative ideas that they may have, because nothing can be dismissed. And sometimes it's the most weird and the wacky ones that are so far into the future that need to come into the now to create the new world. I see this as clear as anything, really. So as you say, there should be no arguments. It shouldn't be a discussion group. You know, I see it this way and I disagree with that. That becomes an argument then, which is obstructive. It's, look, this is how I see it. And so once you've spilled all the beans, then the next person comes in. And how do you see it, Todd? Well, this is how I see it. So all the information gets put out onto the middle table, and you can, as a group, then pick out the chunks that are necessary, then work with those chunks, but don't disregard the other stuff, because they may be coming in the future as well, you know. So that's how I see things is. But as you say, It's got to be built on trust. Now, obviously, we're all growing in this, so there'll be areas in all of us that we're not aware of, right? They will come out in honest and open discussion, if we're willing to turn our eyes inwards and do a self-reflective sort of personal inventory. I've gone on a bit there as a sort
No,
of
no,
thing.
well, no, I think no, you're right on the money, and I believe too, another part of this, the way this is unfolding is, if you take a traditional meeting, that there's going to be some element of of merging, or maybe saying a blessing, or taking a moment of silence together, or to kind of utilize the consciously utilize the unity, utilize the intent to clarify, anchor, whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think too, one of the things that there are many things that we don't know about what's on the other side as we get to the other side again and again and again. The magical stuff, the really cool stuff. And there does seem to be, and this isn't rocket science, a direct relationship between us dealing with our shit and receiving upgrades.
Yeah.
And to me, upgrades are not, and I have this conversation. The upgrades, I appreciate them. I love them. I'm honored to be a part of the process and all that, but that's not what it's limited to. To me, I'm sorry, it's not limited to information. It means that it's the effect it has on our body, the telepathy and the intuition, the empathy. To me, is a big one that I just picked up on a couple of months ago, where we talk about telepathy and intuition, but we never talk about empathy in the sense that the superpower that it is for us, which means that we will never. The reason there's no ego, so to speak, or ego actions that are distorted, so to speak, in 5D, is because you feel everything, just like in a life review, you feel everything, all the repercussions and the ripples of the thoughts, words, and actions you had. So this is the technology that we can turn on by facing our stuff, and then also in our collaborations to have an open round table of every, that has to be a sacred tenet, that everyone be allowed to speak and say what they feel is relevant to say. Because we're no longer living in an environment where we have to go back, let's say you and I, we got to go back to the 10 different, whatever conflicts or disagreements that we had, and we have to go back and we have to like waffle through all that stuff, and we don't have to do that anymore, because we know that we're the same. We know that we're the same. I'm just using this as an example. We've never had an issue, but I'm just saying now, even like, and you might have witnessed this, like when you have a group gathering and somebody acts out or projects or loses their shit. Even if that happens, you still have the rest of the group who's there in a stronger position. Plus they have numbers where they can hold space. Now everyone's looking at it as an observer. No one's judging. Now this sounds like some pie in the sky bullshit, but it's not. These are the things that can turn on a natural, organic basis, but they're directly tied to us facing our shit, which means get your nose out of other people's business, take everything into yourself. And I feel that the added measure, which hasn't really been available because we're all in the middle of this last 100 days, I guess we could just keep it at that, is the creativity and collaboration. Like that's so important. That's so important. what you guys are doing, because when you do it, it's just gonna spread like a wildfire. Every time one of us do this, every time one of these women, like the last couple of days, comes on one of these shows, who's been doing it 20 years, who's never stepped up, who's got the earth, and now they come out. Every time one of them does it, 20 of them say, I'm going to do it. I mean, I'm looking at Julie Pershin. She has a talk show. All right. Anna Toothman, who's come on one open mic, who's got incredible intel, you know, wants to collaborate and create. Elsa Dillon, you know, I mean, just go right down the list. Janine Stadler, when she came on, fascinating, incredible story. You know, I mean, these are not drops in the bucket. This is the whole fucking ocean that we can turn on. And I really firmly believe, we know this is not rocket science. We got to face our shit, and we got to own our shit, and we got to stop pointing fingers at people. But the second part that's coming on, and the third part to me, is the creativity, the creative solution, the creative process as a solution, as a method of expression and inspiration, but the collaboration being that third key element. Because man, like what you guys are going to do, just the energy of y'all coming together, that you won't have to say anything. You could just sit on Chase lounges for 10 days and be around each other, and just the exchange of coding and the illumination of the individuals and the group. I mean, this stuff's coming online. This is a world changer if we just keep taking the steps.
Because it feels like the right thing. People say to me, why do you do that? Because it feels like the right thing to do. End of story. That I don't need to explain it to anybody, because they say, well, what do you mean by that? I say, because it just feels like the correct thing to do. But there is another thing though, is, do I ever get it wrong? Of course I do. And if I do, and it causes upset to anybody, I'll go back and say, look, I'm sorry, I made a mistake there. And that's the old Joe would never admit mistake. He wouldn't say, I don't know, you know. So I've changed, or I've been changed by a different vibration, or whatever the hell. It doesn't really matter the process, but I'm a different person now. And I'll probably be a different person tomorrow when I wake up as well, because any interaction, right, impacts and changes people all the time. You know, I always feel different when I come away from this, because I've listened to some of the stuff you've said, you've listened to me. So we've sort of amalgamated that for positive purpose. And that's the way I see it. You know, that's how Soulology works to me, really. Can I just say something, Todd? What I've learned is, though, I mean, I spend a lot of time helping people to focus on their physical body, right? I just think that if they can practice that heart-centered breathing with a positive emotion, you know, a feeling. So it's just to put your hands on your heart, as you know, and to imagine that you're breathing a feeling of sort of care and loving feeling, a nice, open, light-hearted feeling. And if you can just breathe in 2, 3, 4, 5, and then breathe out 2, 3, 4, 5, but feeling it in the center. Yeah. And then I'm only suggesting, once you get a feeling that it's open and it's flowing and the connection's being made, is to develop a dialogue then with this deeper part of your being, and just say, rather than tell it what you want, ask it what it wants you to do, really. And that's, you know, and that's why I say I keep a bit of a sort of religious thing there, is I just say, thy will, not mine, be done. And that's a sort of like a contract I make every morning, to say, look, I'm willing to surrender my head to you. So send me information whereby I can do what you can see clearly and I can't, you know. And so, yeah. And that's my sort of sacred sort of bit. But, you know, other than that, I'm pretty irreligious, as you know.
Well, you can't, I mean, the thing is, you again, that's like that's like the creativity process, or the collaboration, you know, engagement and collaboration from that pure intention. Like you can't go wrong, even in these changing times, getting into a creative mode and applying your creativity. It may not be the easiest thing, but and it may be easy at times, but you just can't go wrong. And I see it the same way. You know, I used you know, breathing exercises in my early 20s, and so I've never gotten away from it. At times I've gotten away from, utilizing it to ground myself in the moment, to affect my sympathetic, okay, literally. But I have re-engaged it in the last 3 or 4 months. And part of it was from what you had shown me before, and part of it was from a neuroscientist that I just happened to catch. It was a very brief thing, but he talked about pretty much what you said. And it was obviously the people say different things on the count, and you know, do you purse your lips, do you breathe through your nose, whatever works for you. But this process, I found that and it's exactly what you're saying, that first of all, taking the conscious effort to go through a specific short breathing exercise, okay, when you're whatever state you're in, but I've been utilizing it when I need to pull back in, when I need to ground, when I need to get that loop out of my head, when I need to get my energy up even. And that's what he proposes, what you're talking about, the same exact thing, to take the breath in and you know, be the breath, feel the breath, but also to take in with it those types of things that you're talking about, like opening the communication line with my body. Can you tell me something? Okay. Or another one that I use is doing the breathing and then holding the feeling of what I desire. I don't see anything wrong with that. You know, I just like, okay, the universe knows what I want. I may be off. It may be the worst thing in the world for me. Who knows? But I hold the feeling of it, not the attachment to what it is, just the feeling of it. How would that make me feel if I had this, and this? Yeah. Oh my God, this is how I would feel, right? And you just breathe it in. So it's a lot like what you talked about before on previous shows. But yeah, I think the breath at the end of the day, I mean, maybe when we get further along, we're going to actually see everything that we're bringing in with the breath. You know what I mean? Like, yeah, the harmonics and the geometry and the, you know, it's all.
I mean, there's so much that's involved in that simple act. But apparently Buddha said to his chela, right? The chela said, is there any sort of fast track to being free? And Buddha said, apparently, right, just focus on your breathing. Just become aware of your breathing. Because the breathing will take you back to your body, and your body will take you back to the emotions, and then you'll be able to breathe away any negative emotion, open the pathway again, open the inspiration, and be able to carry on. What I've learned, Todd, is if we get triggered, you can actually breathe the trigger away, right, with the out breath. The out breath is a parasympathetic breath. It releases you from the fight and flight response, and it puts you into that neutral zone where you can see the cause of the trigger then, and the action that you have to take. Because it's only ever about cleaning our side of the street, really. I have a little mantra that goes with the breathing, and you might have heard it, right? It's breathe in the light, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out the shite. 1, 2. So, you know, breathe it in, that's the cleansing breath. So you breathe in the cleansing breath, collect all the gunge and the shit that's built up over the eons of time, and then breathe it out and give it back to the universe to actually diffuse it for you, you know. Well, and that's creating more space.
That's, and what I was saying about, like, if you do, if anyone, you do it. I mean, I have my own little routine in the morning, which I'm 6 out of 7 days. I'm pretty good with it. That 15 minutes is so important. It is so important. Or even like now, I've got, you know, I'm trying to you know, I guess get in shape or retard aging or whatever. So I got some weights, and even the 15 minutes to go through some repetitions that I overlooked. I look at it the same way now, because it kind of went from the morning gratitude to let's apply this to lifting some weights 2 times, maybe 3 times a day. Is it really that much of a you know, something that you don't want to do? Is it like, but by the time I get 2-3 minutes into it, I'm like a machine now. Now, I'm not Schwarzenegger, but it's what I'm trying to say is it gets easier and easier. So like going back to the breathing exercises, which again, I utilize a couple of times a day, but in the way I was telling you, it's not, you know, it just comes when I need it, right? But what I noticed as a result of paying more attention as a result of the repetitiveness of doing it, right, is that when I go to my second or third breath, I can immediately feel, as I exhale, I can feel this energy come up through my feet and right up into like my upper thighs. Now, I don't know if it'll go higher or what's going to happen, but what happens is something triggers in my body, in my lower chakras, really, that I can feel just from kind of like consciously tapping into this breathing, and this better than everybody, but and the channel, the sensitivity that it's given me in a very short period of time to the communion with my body, being able to hear my body. Yeah. So
it gets it. Is your willy getting bigger as well? Because that's a good positive sign too.
huh? I haven't found oh, we got to keep it clean. We haven't cut a joke on here all day. Yeah, well, but it's amazing because and these are all the little things that are happening too. I was getting and I'll go back, I don't know exactly what it was, but it was while I was here. So it's been since the first of the year. And I started getting these little dings, and they're going, you guys are going to be able to transform when you mix thought, intent, thought, will, with action. And I'm like, what does that mean? And I kept seeing this I was familiar with, like looking at yourself a certain way, you're going to reflect that, right? Or but to put the thoughts in of I'm strengthening myself with each one of these, and there's breathing involved with the weightlifting too. And so, because almost like you're taking like energetic steroids, where the growth, what you could say by conventional terms, defies medical science. Because look what's happening. We've got people all over the world, and I'm one of them. My spine has stretched out. My lower spine, which had 20% atrophy, which was basically compressed, 4 vertebrae, have come apart. My flexibility, my height. Now they're not 100%, but they're close. I think there might be just 2 of them that are a little bit lodged now, the lowest ones. So there's all this happening, and what does that look like? I mean, I'm so into what can we actually do, and get out of all this, all the drama and all the BS and all the finger pointing, and what can we actually do together? That's why even like this, even with Ty 2 days ago, or even last Monday. Last Monday I was in the shits, and Ty's like, hey, we're making music tonight. I'm like, man, that's the last thing I want to do. But then out of that, and here we go again, the breathing was part of it for me. I feel like crap. All right, let's tap in. Okay, let's open up. Let's just be transparent. And I end up doing a 2-hour session with him, and I pulled a couple of 2-minute songs that were just made up, where for myself, I captured that. But that's what it was the result of. It was the result of me communicating with my body, and that thing that you talked about at the top of the show, when you get there into that heart, how do I feel? And then everything comes and goes through there. The mind appeared. These words appeared. I'm listening to the same way. How the hell did I think of those words? I don't consider myself a freestyle. I mean, I can go a little bit, but not nothing. You know what I mean? But they just came out. That was the channel. That was the channel. The channel was the rhythm, the phrasing, the rhyming, and the substance of the words, along with the music and the breathing. You know what I mean? So I want to play with this stuff. I want to collaborate. I want to create, and therefore there's no attention or no power taken from me on this other stuff. And I believe we can do. I believe we can do it with anybody.
I agree, and I think what that's called, Todd, is called SOULSPEAKS 5D.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what's happening, is that the soul now is expressing itself through our humanness, right? And that's what's going to change the world. But the first thing we have to do is surrender our humanness to allow
Yeah.
the soul to express itself. But in the surrender, the human becomes the hero. I feel emotional saying this now,
Yeah.
because I really feel that when that human completely surrenders, he becomes the perfect vehicle then for the soul and its particular individual purpose to express itself, its gifts, its talents, its skills, its
Yeah.
attributes, its gift. You know, I
Yeah.
think that that's what it's. In fact, I've got a big thing going up my spine now. And what you talk about, you know, Charles Atlas did this. It's called dynamic tension, because he could dip into this. He didn't need to use any weights or anything like that. He became Mr. Universe just by doing basically qigong exercises, you know.
Like
And
isometric.
yeah. So it's to do with calisthenics, it's to do with dynamic tension. But really, the Oriental arts have known this for 5,000 years,
Yeah.
because they've been tuned in to the chi flow, and to be able to direct where the chi flows through imagination and through breathing as well. So, you know, you can almost like train one biceps muscle by just using your imagination, taking the energy to that
Yeah.
biceps muscle, and then just using the dynamic tension, you know.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm being shown, Todd. And I also think that we'll be able to consciously, we'll be able to travel to different dimensions consciously, whereas in sleep now, there's no sort of control of it. We just end up in different dimensions. But I think the time's coming now, and we're being trained now to be able, almost like Stargate, to put in a different code just before we go to sleep, and to actually direct where we want to go. I can see that happening as clear as anything, really. So there's
Yeah.
so much going on.
I'd like to get and I've already had like 4 of them. I'm going to send out some more information before I go public on adding more programming, like in that group that you're involved with. And so I'll get more out of it tonight. I said I'd do it last night, but I didn't. I was working on it, but I just didn't get finished. But what I was going to say is I'd like to see that would be, I mean, that would be really something really cool. And part of that, and part of this platform would be to have people that do weekly, a weekly education, a weekly practice of qigong, and you know, tai chi, or whatever. These are. I mean, this is a really big deal. I mean, I have not embraced it the way that I've wanted to, and I've known about it for years, and that kind of pisses me off, because I've met people who utilize it in their lives personally and online, and I know what it does for them. You know, and you were talking about the Atlas. I mean, a few years ago, I was doing, or just a few years, about 20 years ago, 20 years ago now, Jesus. I was in California doing some consulting for a big company out there, and one of their people this dude was probably 75, and this guy was a pitcher with the New York Yankees in the early 60s. I went and looked him up and everything. He was a Hispanic guy, one of the first Latins, you know, that were, you know. So, but what he would do, because I'd ride around with him, and sometimes I'd go on sales calls with him, and he would constantly be doing isometrics. Right now, this dude was like 75 years old. He was my size. His muscles were extraordinary. I mean, they were extraordinary, and it was for no weights. It was just isometric. So I know there's, I know there's more to it than isometrics, but yeah, this movement, the movement of the light body, the movement of the chi, of the energy. I mean, this is like Reiki. I mean, there's unlimited potential, especially in light of what you're talking about, like with Charles Atlas. Again, if we're all have the potential to become Jesus, and what about everything else along the way, like the different things that people mastered, you know, like Beethoven not having hearing and being a great, there's so many different examples.
There's the kids again, you see. the kids again, some kids come through prodigiously and they can play a piano at 1 and 2 years of age,
Yeah.
like Bach and all that. See, I want to know how that happens because they come through clean. They can already do that. So they're bringing information from the past.
Right.
Not only they're bringing the information through, they're bringing the actual movements as well. So they're physical. It's a mind-body connection all in one, you know. I suppose we'll have to wrap up soon, Todd, because it's coming up to 10 o'clock here. And
No, I'm going to keep you all night.
you can do, but
Hang on a second. Don't hang up. I'm gonna end the stream. How do I do this? Oh yeah, I can do this. Yeah. Hey, thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone. Lovely
We
to
have
see you.
more coming out. I have this up on the network in the next 20-25 minutes, and I'll get you a copy, Dr. Joseph, share on social media.
Okay, mate. Thanks.
Live stream is stopped. Recording.